Fred, Sheila McCoy.
Hi.
Hatfield McCoy Museum. FredMcCoy.com. Hatfields and McCoy's Museum. Hatfields McCoy's Museum.com. There's no and in there. It's just Hatfields McCoy's Museum.
Right.
This is going to be part 2 of the video that we just
We're
ago.
going to do a follow-up kind of, or a continuation.
A continuation on a documentary on YouTube titled Hatfields and McCoy's Documentary. We had just finished the one talking about Devil Ants timbering and Randall McCoy being
And now
jealous.
Tina Weiler, you was talking about her when
Yeah.
you didn't.
Documentary says that in 1872, Devil Ants Hatfield won a lawsuit over 5,000 acres of land that belonged to Randall's cousin, Perry Klein. As far as we can find, Altina was the first to state that Randall and Perry were cousins or blood kin. Altina Waller, author, so-called author. These two men were absolutely no blood relation, and how easy to have researched their genealogy and told the truth. However, it sounded better to say these two men were mad over property rather than that Devil Ants was a deserter, a murderer, and a thief. See, Altina Waller was like Jimmy Wolford, and Jimmy was a dear friend
Yes,
of
he
Sheila's
was a
and mine.
sweet person, good friend.
Dear friend.
Yep.
But Jimmy was wrong, and Jimmy would tell you in his, we've got videos. We're going to play these videos one day. We've got these videos now that we're making, but we've got hundreds of videos with Jimmy Wolford.
When we visited him.
And Jimmy will set you straight on why he said Devil Ants was 6 foot tall, and why he thought he was going to be marketed, and he did market to the Hatfields.
Right.
And so he was a dear friend, but he was still incorrect. But anyway, Altina was the first one to say that they were cousins. Documentary contradicts itself. Devil Ants won a lawsuit that belonged to Randall's cousin, Perry Klein. You know, Altina's saying here that Devil Ants won 5,000 acres in a lawsuit. Again, we've mentioned it in several videos. To this day, we still have not seen that lawsuit that supposedly dated in 1872. It should be fairly easy to find, 1872 court records, Kentucky or West Virginia. There's nothing there. We're going to read you a deed in a minute. It was from 1877. But for right now, let's just stick with this. There's never been any... if the property in fact belonged to Perry Klein, how did Devil Ants win it? Either it was Devil Ants or Perry's. Still to this day, we've never seen it. She says that Devil Ants won a lawsuit over 5,000 acres of land that belonged to Randall's cousin, Perry Klein. How could Devil Ants win a lawsuit for 5,000 acres if she's acknowledging here that the property belonged to Perry Klein? Don't make sense. Oxymoron. Sheila and I did find a handwritten paper on YouTube video made by Bill Richardson. The so-called deed was dated for 23rd day of March 1877 between Perry Klein and Anderson Hatfield. First, let us say the so-called deed that was displayed on the YouTube video has not been seen personally by Sheila and I. We just saw it on the wall in his museum at one time, and Bill makes the comment that he has records and documents there that's never been seen before. Well, does that mean never been seen before because they're that rare, or never been seen before because somebody's just printed them up? Because this paper up here is just printed on a piece of paper, it looks like. There's nothing at the top that describes it as a court deed or a court record. There's nothing that's official about it that we can see. Now, again, we haven't seen the whole document, so maybe that will be produced eventually, and that would be great, because that would serve as something in history to show people. I'm going to tell you what Stephen Hatfield told me one time, and it made so much sense. Stephen Hatfield said that way back, that when they had the museum at Sarah Ann, Henry, and Jean Hatfield, that they would take old books, that they would go to the library and get old books and tear the pages out of these old books because the pages in them were old. It was old paper. It wasn't like they were producing them. And then they would write deeds, they would write statements, they would write whatever they wanted to on that old paper, which made it look more authentic than just writing something on a new piece of paper. And he said that they would take that books would have a blank paper or two in the front or at the rear, just a blank sheet of paper. And that's why mine and Sheila's books, none of them have blank paper. We start from the first page in, putting for autographs or something. And that's one of the reasons we do that, because there's no blank. Because someday these books are going to be 100 years old, 200 years old. Nobody can take a page out of them and do that with. And I don't even know that that's the truth. I have no reason to doubt Stephen, because he's one of the most truthful people. He was a West Virginia Hatfield. He was Devil Lance Hatfield's great-grandson, and he was one of the most truthful people about the feud that you'll ever run across. I would aspire to be like him on both sides of the feud, because he didn't care how it fell. He would tell you how bad they were, and that's something to be. Devil Lance was a mean man, and he cherished in that. He cherished the fact that his great-grandfather was as mean and badass as he was. And he was in some things. Some things he was a coward. Some things he was tough. Anyway, so this paper up here, let's go on and read about it. Or is it entirely? Nor could we view the document in its entirety. Secondly, remember, there were at least 2 Anderson Hatfields in the Tug Valley area during this time, with one of them living in Kentucky. Thirdly, it's dated for the 23rd day of March, 1877, not 1872, as Altina Waller says was the date of this notorious lawsuit that she's always referring to. Are we to believe that Devil Lance won a lawsuit in 1872, but the property wasn't deeded to him until 1877? More interesting than that is, if in fact, hypothetically speaking, Devil Lance did win this lawsuit, please explain why Anderson Hatfield is conveying a tract of land lying on Tug River in Pike County, Kentucky, it being the land that Anderson Hatfield purchased from Green W. Taylor, valued at $1,900. The document says, do hereby sell and convey to the party of the second part. She's going to take a close-up, and she's going to give you a way that you can close in on the little bit that we could see of what.
I'll make one picture of that. I make individual pictures of everything on that board.
And here it is, and it reads about the deed. Documentary. Basically what this says here, and down at the bottom it mentions, you can barely see it, West Virginia contains 5,000 acres, more or less. They said Devil Lance won this property in a lawsuit. In this deed right here, and again, there's room for me to be wrong, because I can barely read it. I've blown it up. You can see I'm half blind. But we've blown it up. We've done everything that we can do to try to read word for word, verbatim, what it says. And what we gather out of it is that Perry Klein traded 5,000 acres of his land in West Virginia, of the Tug River, the West Virginia side of the Tug River, to Devil Lance Hatfield for one tract of land on the Tug River in Pike County, Kentucky. Now, that's what that deed, the way I read it, says. Now, it don't say how big the tract was that Perry Klein got in Kentucky. It just says one tract of land to Perry and Martha Klein. Read it for yourself. If it don't say nothing about a lawsuit. According to this is a deed where these two gentlemen are trading property. Nothing in a lawsuit that says, I'm ordered by the courts to deed this 5,000 acres to Devil Lance Hatfield. It don't say that. It says that he's trading one tract of land in Kentucky to 5,000 acres tract of land in West Virginia to Devil Anse. So, the documentary says McCoy was outraged. And documentary, that's a direct quote, McCoy was outraged and concluded that Hatfield was a thief even though the land had been legally won. Why would McCoy, if this is true, hypothetically, let's say Perry Klein, let's say Devil Anse, there's really a lawsuit out there and Devil Anse won 5,000 acres from Perry Klein. It's not what the evidence shows, but let's say that it happened. Why would Randall McCoy be outraged because Perry Klein lost 5,000 acres? Perry Klein didn't mean a bag of beans to Randall McCoy. They were no blood relation. They were not business partners. They were not, there was nothing. So anyway, there has never been a suit filed by Randall McCoy against Devil Anse Hatfield, or vice versa for that matter, over property or anything else. There's never been a lawsuit from Randall McCoy and Devil Anse Hatfield. Even though this statement appeared on this documentary, the statement is also one Altina Waller has spoken into history on the History Channel. Even if Perry had lost a lawsuit to Devil Anse, why would that infuriate Randall McCoy? Altina simply spoken or written into history in order to have something to say. And who better to say something negative about this man who never talked to the media and never took narcissist photos of himself or his family members toting guns, and never really stood up for himself or his reputation. Why? Because he was heartbroken over losing children to a murderer, deserter, and a coward, and not able to bring him to justice. Why would Altina attack Randall McCoy as much as she does in her book? Randall McCoy, Daniel McCoy, Paris McCoy, goes on and on and on. Why would she do as she did? Randall McCoy, because Randall McCoy didn't stand up. Because the McCoys didn't stand up, even to this day. How many McCoys you see in line out here behind Fred and Sheila? How many do you see out here outspoken and saying, hey guys, you've said this garbage long enough, we're going to start calling your hand on it. You're going to have to start proving this stuff. You can't just continue to put this man up here on this pedestal and him a coward and a murderer and a deserter and neglect this guy here and say the things that you said about him. Now again, let the Hatfield part of me be taken up for Randall McCoy instead of the McCoy surname, because I don't care which side it is, it's not right. When I was in school, I decided I wanted to be a police officer one day. I decided that because I didn't like bullies. I didn't like the people. I was always taken up. I was a little bitty fella, but I would fight. I would take up for the ones that couldn't fight for themselves. You can ask any of my classmates. I was mean, but I didn't bully people. I took up for people. And then that's why I became a cop, to take up for people that couldn't take up for themselves. That's why I joined the military. So it's time that we start standing up and telling what happened here. This man, Randall McCoy, did not take up for himself. He did not talk to the media. He didn't gather his kids together holding guns and act like he's a badass out there in front of his cabin. He stayed with his wife, Sarah, with the kids that he had left that was still alive. He was probably afraid to do much of anything, afraid they'd kill some more of them, which finally they did. How can we continue to dog a person like that? I don't see it. I just don't. It don't take much of an author or a writer to just keep writing stuff and dogging. When you have the evidence on the other one, and you can see his narcissist attitude and personality, I don't know. What are you on right there?
14 and a half.
Okay.
So you got about 6 more minutes.
Documentary says Klein and McCoy's vowed revenge over the lawsuit. Now that's what this documentary says. And of course this still comes from Altina Waller, but is writing a documentary or filming a documentary. Shouldn't she be held to a level of responsibility to say, I better make sure I can prove this. I better make sure. Let's look at this again. Klein and McCoy's vowed revenge over the lawsuit. Goes to show people, just because you see a video titled documentary or a book subtitled The Truth or the Real Story doesn't make it true. Be leery. The McCoys and Klein vowed revenge because Perry Klein lost 5,000 acres that we've never ever seen other than written in the history. Documentary, my foot. Documentary says the McCoy brothers got drunk and picked a fight with Ellis and Hatfield. They stabbed him. He was a very powerful man. He must have stayed at Planet Fitness or Gold's Gym, I guess, because the fellow wasn't but 5 foot 10 inches tall. They said the McCoys come up to his knees or something like that. So, I mean, I guess they must have been 2 foot tall, but a bunch of midgets. Okay.
All right.
I mean, I can just picture that. That's the stories they've told over the years, that Ellis and Hatfield was so big that the McCoys just come up to his waist. And that's possible if they were midgets. But I mean,
yeah, well,
that's in this documentary. All Ellis and Hatfield's Civil War records show him to be 5'10" tall. Ellison's records show he was born in 1841. The Civil War muster roll shows he too deserted in 1863. So he would have been around 23 years old. So unless he had a late growth spurt in life, he was only 5 foot 10 inches tall. However, because of the old photos where Ellison looks so huge next to his brother, Devil Anse, authors have allowed people to think Ellison was huge. He wasn't huge. It was Devil Anse was so small it made him appear bigger. I'm only 5'7" myself, but put me next to a midget and I'll be standing tall. Okay, I think she's got to put a new battery in. We're almost done with this segment, but we're going to have to go to 3 parts. It's only now getting interesting, so you may want to tune back in for part 3 just to see where it goes.
I might be able to add this one and part 3 together.
Thanks for joining us so far. Like and subscribe. See you on the next one.
Bye.